boys and girls, men, women, children, people of all kinds, whoever you are, everyone's welcome to it. Your boy Peter here, aka Peter Freakout 10, baby. Bring you guys our episode of Video Game Time, where the good games are always reviewed. Alright, back into our video game review. Now, on today's episode, we're kicking off a series that starts with a very important game in the gaming space, and the horror genre in video games. As without this game, there would be no survival horror. And I guarantee you this genre wouldn't have gone anywhere if it wasn't for this game. As it's a game that its name, along with some of the best horror movies, is a name that in the horror community is one that I think people saw just with this game how horror was becoming even more immersive in video games as opposed to just movies and books and comics. And what game is that, you may be asking? That game is none other than Resident Evil. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me do it better. Resident Evil. And much like Silent Hill, this was actually my first time playing it. But did it all come together? Well, grab your combat knives, your health sprays, because we're gonna kill some zombies as we talk about Resident Evil. Now, Resident Evil, this was a game made in the year 1996, and this was developed by Capcom. Now, Capcom, this is a big name in the gamer space with the Street Fighter series, the Mega Man series, Ghouls and Ghosts, and a few arcade games. And it was developed for the PlayStation, the PC, which is what I played it on if you guys watched the Let's Play, and the Sega Saturn. Now, what a lot of people may not know, depending how deep you are into Resident Evil, is that this game actually stemmed from inspiration from a game that Capcom had worked on in 1989 called Sweet Home, which itself was originally an adaptation of a Japanese horror film of the same name. I haven't seen it, I haven't played the game, so I can't comment on it, but Capcom and the creator of the game, Tokuro Fujiwara, were both looking to get a game going that was also set in a haunted mansion, and the team chose Shinji Mikami to lead the project, being that Tokuro served as a mentor to him. He was comfortable in the fact that Tokuro served as an in-game producer on it, with Mikami playing a huge part in bringing this game to life, as production began in 1993 with an original aim being to develop this game for the SNES, with the original intent being to make the mansion more of a hellish place, with the original intention on psychological Japanese horror. Then, in 1994, the PlayStation was announced to be on the way, and Capcom insisted on moving development to that console, which helped them in the long run due to the amount of polygons that they could work with. Along with the change in hardware, the team also abandoned the idea of psychological-centered horror in favor of drawing inspiration from Dawn of the Dead and inserted the idea of zombies, with the original intention being to make it a first-person shooter in the style of Doom. Then, as development was moving forward, Shinji had come across Alone in the Dark in 1992. He noticed the fixed camera angles in the game, and he felt this added a cinematic quality to the game that he felt would fit Resident Evil, with the original intention being to make the game have co-op. But it was tough for the crew, and they put that idea to the wayside. But they started developing the game, and once the game was finished, the rest is history, let's be honest here. Because when this game was released, it didn't have a huge promotion to it, and when it dropped, nobody saw it coming. Hell, even the developers were expecting the game to cater towards a small core audience that they thought was going to be small, which Capcom shared equal thoughts. But they were surprised when it was realized that it was the most successful PlayStation game at the time. And by 1997, worldwide, it had sold about 4 million units and grossed over $200 million. And the game was also a critical success, with the PlayStation version being the highest rated. Critics praised the game for its graphics, atmosphere, puzzles, gameplay, and tone. The game was also responsible for helping to revitalize the zombie genre, something of which George A. Romero shares equal thoughts of, and had an impact on horror video games, helping to give new meaning to the term survival horror and helped usher in a new era of these sort of games with the sequels. And then in 1999, Konami would take the same approach with Silent Hill. And these would all follow suit in with the sort of control scheme and similar camera angles. And as years have gone on, it did get some criticism because of the voice acting, which people found hokey, but it still managed to win itself some awards, and it was so successful that Capcom began work on a sequel. But that's a story for another time. Now, much like Silent Hill, this was actually my first time playing this game. I was worried about giving it a try because I had heard about the tank controls and I thought it wasn't going to be something I was going to get used to and that it would make the levels hard for me to get through. And listening to people's thoughts on how the cutscenes were done, it kind of drove me away from trying it. However, due to my friends having great things to say about this game and listening to many people talk about the legacy this game left behind, and listening to my other friends who are like, judge it for yourself. Just because someone else says they don't like it doesn't mean you should follow suit. You should play it and judge it after you talk about it. I figured, why not try it? And I'm glad I did, because I see why this game has the legacy it has. Because at the end of the day, this is a solid survival horror game, and it's a solid zombie game. I will say, with it being the first, it has its flaws, and immediately after playing this, I jumped right into Resident Evil 2. And as I'm playing that game, as you guys have seen the videos that I've done, I find that to be a much better game than this one. And of the trilogy so far of what I've played, Resident Evil 2 is the best of the games. And when it comes to its rival, the first Silent Hill, I think that is a much better game. I think it's a scarier game than this one, whereas this one's more fun. But I think that really goes to show how, since this game, survival horror really evolved and it perfected the standards set by this one game. But for the first game, it's a solid horror game that I think deserves to have its impact acknowledged. And I'll explain why later. But getting into the plot of the game gives you the choice to play as either Chris Redfield or Jill Valentine. And they're a part of this special forces group called S.T.A.R.S in a fictional city called Raccoon City. And near that area is the Arklay Mountains, where there have been these weird murders going on. And they're ordered by the police, and Umbrella, a pharmaceutical company that has the city in the palm of its hands, to go and investigate the area. So pretty much they go along with Barry and Albert Whisker and a few other members. And when they get there, members of the squad are attacked and their transportation leaves. And as they continue to be attacked, they look for shelter, and they make their way to this mansion in the woods where they discover that it's a secret front for Umbrella, who have been working in secret underground at this mansion, creating super soldiers and making bioweapons, and began testing this serum on various animals and people. And it morphed into this virus and started spreading and turning everyone around it into zombies. And because now they're getting deeper into their operation and fear they might let it out to the world, they try using the mistake they made with the zombies and infected monsters to have them killed. Making things harder as now Chris and Jill are separated, so not only do they need to fight their way out of the mansion, but also find a way to be reunited, all the while dealing with hordes of the infected making themselves at home in this mansion. Will Chris and Jill be able to find their way out of the mansion and reunite with each other, or will they be the next choice on the menu at Zombie Hunt? I really feel like Resident Evil works because it's a game that is every horror fan's dream come true, because it's the closest you would ever get to a George A. Romero game or being in a George A. Romero movie. And starting there, I got two things I do like about the story. I like the fact that it takes elements set by George A. Romero's work and does its own thing with the zombie concept, even though it takes some influence from Night of the Living Dead, as you have the zombies angle and these people trapped in a house and they're doing everything they can to survive and get out. But I also noticed some cues that it takes from Aliens a bit, in that it's a special forces group going in to deal with these sort of beings, both of which are creatures from an unknown world or an unknown DNA, and their objective to basically go in there is tied into corporations hitting some secret objective that they had in mind besides them coming in to destroy these monsters. And I think it does a good job combining those two elements and doing its own thing. I like the idea of this mansion serving as the hideout for this operation. And I like how as you explore the mansion and go through each room, you start to see what was going on as you see the messes in the kitchen and all this stuff around. And you start reading journals and papers chronicling how people were feeling or their studies. I like this one in particular being this dude who ended up catching the infection, and he starts talking about this rash on his arm and how he's trying to fight himself from scratching. And as you read more of the entries in his diary, you get the idea through his words that he's beginning to change, and he starts talking about where you really see the change commence is when he's like, I got a hunger for human flesh. So I like how that ties into the gameplay and how that encourages you to check all areas of the mansion as you get a full understanding of the story and the characters' worlds. And while it does break the show don't tell rule, it does it in a way where it feels like it's telling you this stuff to build up to the show portion. And it makes the twist that you find out surprising, because while we dig a lot into Umbrella and their plans, what is revealed about them is surprising because, spoiler, I'm going to put a spoiler here for anybody who has not played Resident Evil, because what is revealed about them is the fact that one member of the group is actually tied to Umbrella. I thought that was very interesting. Along with that, I also like the creativity of the infected as well as the zombies. I like that it's not just humans that are infected, but also animals and these creatures that they created, and these sort of super soldiers. I thought it gave the world of the infected in this game a bit of character outside of the regular humans. And while it is fun and it's not as scary as, say, Silent Hill, there are some creepy moments, like when you first see the zombie around the corner when you're investigating the mansion and it's eating one of the members that was there before you, and it drops the head and looks back at you. I can see why a lot of audiences hold that part in high regard and why it creeped them out. Or even when the hunter is revealed in the first person camera, sort of akin to Evil Dead, as you see him running through and opening the door, and you basically see him coming into the mansion, and you hear this sort of snarl through the shadows, and he basically enters the light. There's a real threatening presence to him. So despite what I'm going to talk about with the hokey voice acting when I get to that, there are some genuinely creepy moments in this game. I also really like the characters. I thought they were likable. They had great personalities. You wanted them to survive this whole ordeal. You even wanted Chris and Jill to be reunited. And on paper, I like the fact that the game gives you the opportunity to play the game from both Chris and Jill's point of view as you go through the game. You do see some differences in the story department and some story beats, with Jill's portion having Barry playing more of a part in the story and Chris having Rebecca Chambers to deal with, as there's some areas you do need to play as her, being that there's some parts where you get sick and she has to run to basically get medicine to help you. Now, with that said, some aspects of the story could have been a bit more refined. And that's where I said on paper, the idea of playing as one character and going through their own story beats is cool. But those areas could have been a bit more refined, because I don't feel the game does a good job distinguishing one character's story from another. Because despite some small story beats that really distinguish one from the other, it's really you going through the same beats as you would with either Jill or Chris, which despite having new weapons at your disposal, or vice versa with Chris, it really doesn't offer much. Now with Chris, they do give you a boss at the end that they don't with Jill, but for a good majority of the games, it just feels like it goes through the same motions as the other characters. I mean, the Barry stuff I do like. I like that Jill has someone to connect to during this situation. But even with that, like, from that side, it's mostly the same stuff that with the papers that you find as Jill. There's no other collectibles suited for other characters, and I felt there could have been more that distinguished one from the other. Even with Rebecca having more screen presence, it doesn't feel like there is much to her. And I really don't like her as a character. I don't like those moments with Rebecca. I don't like that the game suddenly decides you're poison and stops the game in its tracks. And Rebecca enters the room and suddenly you have to get an antidote for Chris. And I don't like that those moments are shoved in your face. Those moments also contribute to the game's slow pacing, which is boring at times. And there's some areas that I do feel like they drag on with and don't offer anything interesting, which the Rebecca portions are a part of. Or even some of the puzzles, which playing Resident Evil 2, that does a better job with the puzzles as they don't take as long to figure out. It's more like, the best way to describe it is the original is Tomb Raider 1. Resident Evil 2 is Tomb Raider 2. It's a lot more faster paced. The puzzles take a lot less brain power. And it's more action-y, which I like. And I think that's why I gravitate to Resident Evil 2 more. But it still holds on to the horror aspects. Whereas this is all horror. That being said, despite those problems, for a first game, the good outweigh the bad. And I would be a lot more harsh on it if it wasn't as creative as it is from a story department. Now, graphically, I think the game looks good. While the look of the mansion itself is this 2D pre-rendered background that they had the characters rendered into in 3D, I think it works for what they were going for. And what they were able to do, I think, worked out fine. I think the environments themselves are really creative. The mansion itself has a great mood and atmosphere to it, especially in the attention to detail. You really buy something went down here. There's really a sense of mystery to these rooms. And I really like that these bear a resemblance to Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, which even the creators admit they did purposefully, as the place really looks like the Overlook Hotel in that movie. Or even just the portion when they're underground, where you see all the labs or the experiments were conducted. And for what little they could do with this game and not knowing much about the technology, I think it paid off nicely, being that this was their first game. On top of that, the creatures themselves are really greatly designed. I will say the zombies and how they move, I do feel the animation on them is a bit clunky in some parts and a bit mannequin-like, especially around the body textures in some areas, which same goes for the character models, and some shots of them look like they have penguin feet. I'm not kidding you. You look at the feet in that game, they look like penguin feet in some shots. That would be another area that the sequel would improve on. But besides those two, I think other areas of the game's graphics look fine, especially in the creature designs. There's a great variety of creatures to fight besides the zombies, as you'll fight infected dogs called Cerberus, spiders, snakes, infected sharks, evil plants straight out of Little Shop of Horror, wasps. But there's also enemies like the Hunters, which are these weird half-human, half-lizard-looking creatures with these weird claws that can take you out in one hit. There's the Chimera, which are a mix of insect and human in one, and they'll climb up on the walls and they'll grab you like this. So there's a lot of creativity to the enemies that I feel really makes them stand out. And it really does make me forgive the designs of the zombies and how they are animated. You can sort of tell that those aspects were the last thing that they animated or they were learning to animate, and that all their effort went into the bosses and all the other stuff that were designed. And I think they did learn from that, because in Resident Evil 2, the zombies look a lot better. They're more realistic. Their movement is more natural, especially in the gore animation. Here, it's very basic and nothing to the length complaints of Resident Evil 2, which I'll talk about when I review that, or even Turok 2. Hell, the first Turok had some unique animations when they came to the gore, like the neck spurts. But here they're fine for what they are. They get the job done. You can shoot off the head, and you can shoot off arms, and there's some points when they're on the ground, and they'll try to bite you. That, I will say, was cool. And along with that, the cutscenes are fine for what they offer. They're no Silent Hill, nor are they the quality of, say, Soul Reaver or Shadow Man. But for what they are, they look fine. They're animated fine. And the live action portions, while a bit campy in some areas, being the actors they worked with aren't the best, they're fine for what they had to offer. They're not trying to be top tier Titanic level acting, but for the most part, they get the job done. Other cutscenes are done with the in-game graphics, and they're fine. Characters just twirl their head around like this, or talk like that. It's not like their lips move or any of that. So there's nothing groundbreaking in the animation department there. But they get the job done. Along with that, the sound itself I am mixed on. The good I'll say, the score by Mamoru Samaragachi is great. It really gives the game its atmosphere and adds a sense of excitement to the levels and each room you enter. The themes for the bosses, those are all great. And the sounds they did for the monsters are also great. I don't want to say zombies because there's more than just zombies in this game. Like the snarls for the hunters or the zombies' noises. They're great and they really give them an uncomfortable presence. The bad, I will say, and I think you all know this is coming, the voice acting. Yes, it's fun bad. Like, you do have the lines that sound like they were done in one take. Like Barry's whole, you could have been a Jill sandwich line, or Wesker's hamming it up performance at the end. There are some good ones here and there, but for the most part, it is a bit rough, especially with compared to Silent Hill, which some people pick on that too, but at least in Silent Hill, the people at least felt like they were doing it in more than one take and had some emotion in their voice. Unlike here, which seems like they just did it in one take and that was it. Like I said, as survival horror games have come and gone, especially with the sequels, hell, even Dino Crisis, they have improved. But for what they could do with this game, it's fine. Now, of course, you have to talk about the gameplay. The game is basically played from a third-person cinematic camera view as you make your way through the apartment or mansion as either Chris or Jill. And depending on who you play as, I have mentioned this already, there's really no variation between the two. You'll be going through the same motions on both sides. There's teeny tiny portions, but for the most part, you'll be going through the same motions and the same sort of puzzles, going from room to room, shooting zombies, solving puzzles, or fighting bosses. And each character has their own weapons, like a mini knife. There's two versions of the Beretta. There's a Remington, a Colt Python, a rocket launcher, a flamethrower. So there's a lot to the weapons department in this game. And each of the weapons I just listed will be assigned to either or character. And that aspect plays into the difficulty aspect of the game, with Chris's playthrough being a bit harder than Jill's gameplay, with the enemies on Jill's side being easier to take down because her weapon cache getting bigger firepower and the enemies being a lot easier to take down with the pistol or shotgun, as opposed to Chris, where the enemies are really bullet spongy and will take more than one shot to take them down, which does add some challenge. And despite the improved animation in the sequels for the zombie, it was ahead of its time for the basic gore animation. And it can be cool to shoot a zombie in the head and his head will go flying, or shoot his arm off. That I thought was cool. Even for how basic it is, at the time, it was innovative. But it can be a bit hard, the shooting, especially when it comes to the controls, mostly in the targeting. Now, I want to make something perfectly clear. I have no issue with the tank controls, especially since I got used to them pretty quickly. And on the surface, they're fine. The running is fine. The characters feel like they have some sort of weight on them. They don't feel floaty or feel unresponsive. The guns feel great. They feel punchy when you use them. But the biggest problem that I do have with the controls is when you turn your character. when you try to turn your character to make a shot, it feels really slow and clunky. And sometimes in situations where you're in a rush to shoot something, you'll end up turning so slowly that you'll miss your target and end up wasting your ammo. And sometimes it doesn't completely lock on there. And even when the zombies are up on your face, there's no melee attack to kick them back. Your health will be pretty much go down. So that really is annoying. Besides that, the shooting when you get it down can be cool. There's also puzzles to solve, which are a little basic, especially when compared to Silent Hill, but there are some cool ones, like there's this one in particular where basically there's all these pictures around and there's the symbols in like a line. That's basically the order you have to push them, and basically when you pull the levers down, it'll open the picture frame. But if you pull the levers wrong, there's these crows that will attack you. There's another one where you have to figure out the code on a computer that will unlock the door. There's even a point, and this one I didn't see coming. There's one where you have to make a poison to kill plants, and you have to put the ingredients in a particular way, and you have to figure it out through math. So the puzzles do have some variety to them, and each of them are unique in their own way and have a good sense of creativity to them. And they're a ton of fun to figure out. Much like Silent Hill, there is a sense of accomplishment when you do. Besides that, the last aspect of the game are the boss battles, which are fine. You'll fight like a giant snake, you'll fight spiders, you'll even fight the tyrant at the end, which has two versions. Like, it's easy to take down as Jill, but when you play as Chris, you get two parts to the boss battle. Basically, you take him out in the same way Jill did, but then when you make it to the top to get to the helicopter, he'll come out of the ground and you have to take him out there. That's basically the final boss. And all they are is just shoot to their dead. Nothing really innovative. They're definitely no Soul Reaver boss battles, but they're fine for what they are. I'm making that clear because I don't want to seem as harsh on them, because they do get their job done for what they were going for. And towards the end of the game, you do have a particular choice you make that will depend on the ending you receive. There's a total of 6 endings in the game. And basically, the particular choice you make brings you to the outcome of that ending. So if you're hoping for replayability, you're going to get that too if you're a completionist. And you'll find yourself coming back a lot. But yeah, I've pointed out the cons with this game. I've said what needed to be said already, so let's get down to the final verdict. When it comes down to it, while the first Resident Evil does have some chinks in the armor, and the sequel would fix that, it's still important to acknowledge the impact of the first game on gamers and what it did for the horror genre. Because without this game, so many others I doubt would have existed. And I feel this is a game that needs to be played to be understood as to why it had its impact. And while some may see its shortcomings, especially first-time players, it is a game that should be experienced once. So when it comes down to it, the final rating for Resident Evil is an 8 out of 10, and it deserves it. It therefore gets the Alexandra seal of approval. Definitely one to check out if you're looking to get into survival horror. This is a great place to start. Start from the beginning with Resident Evil, and if you like that, move on to the sequel, which I will be reviewing soon. But anyway, that's my review for Resident Evil. I am still working on the Boondock Saints review. I got a little bit more of it written up, so that's coming. The Chasing Amy review is almost done. Just got to talk about the pros and the cons and what I didn't like and did. And then I'm going to do a review of the Scream films, because I saw Scream 3 last night. I'm going to review Scream 1 and Scream 2. Those are coming. And I'm going to finish up the DVD update soon. I do have some more parts coming of The Sims, so be on the lookout for all those. But anyway, organize these so that I can get them in the right position as to how I'm going to review them. But with that said, I will see you guys later. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think of Resident Evil. Which is your favorite Resident Evil game? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to rate, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.